misunderstanding of U.S. doctrine and an assumption about Chinese thought. For example, the Western operational level of war is sometimes depicted as the ways part of an ends, ways, means formulation of strategy. But the ways of this construct is more similar to the Chinese idea of strategic mean, zanlui shudan, than to the operational level. Works in English that connect Western, especially American, doctrinal concepts with PLA doctrinal concepts as direct equivalents should be viewed with extreme skepticism. The Chinese do not have a military doctrine as it is understood in Western militaries, but rather a unique style of military regulation that precludes easy comparison. Those interested in the PLA especially should see M. Taylor Fravel, Active Defense, Chinese Military Strategy since 1949, published in 2019. The other weakness herein is an excessive focus on land warfare. This is a function entirely of my own shortcomings and background when it comes to aviation and naval operations. I have made an attempt to include more on those subjects than I did in my previous book, but the attention is still far less than they deserve. This book, like the last, is not a work of history but one of theory. It uses history extensively for evidence and explanation to support the theory, but is not intended to be a work of history. It therefore relies mostly on secondary sources. Primary sources in the form of doctrinal manuals and, in one case, a discussion between myself and an author of doctrinal manuals were used. But secondary sources necessarily underpin the development of the theory itself. If there is any one takeaway from this book and on tactics, it's that there is no one route to victory in war. There are too many factors that come into play, and theory is at its best when it helps one think about those factors without trying to prescribe solutions. Where I prescribe solutions, they address organizational issues. Hopefully, that is what this book is, a tool for greater clarity. I hesitate to say that I am following in Clausewitz's footsteps except in one respect, that he railed against the purveyors of shallow prescriptions, salesmen promising success if only the proper rules and guides are followed. There are no new rules of war, just as there were no old ones. There are no guarantees and no certainties. There are definitely no simple answers. Anyone saying otherwise is selling snake oil. Unfortunately, there is far too much of that in the defense world today, growing and accumulating on the U.S. military especially, like plague. Some of it comes from academia, some of it from the political punditry rackets on the right and left. Some of it, like the operational level of war, grows from misunderstandings within the U.S. military itself. But all war is subject to probabilities, so there is no way to know whether or not my attack on this particular misunderstanding will be as successful as Clausewitz's was. The only way to know is to launch it. Introduction. A revolution is an idea that has found its bayonets. Napoleon Bonaparte. Regarding the general staff system that first sprang up in Prussia and then spread throughout Europe and the world, Sir Michael Howard writes, "This general staff was perhaps the great military innovation of the 19th century." On Operations argues that Howard was correct and that general staffs were developed to cope with the expanding complexity and scale of modern warfare since the Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815. At the same time, another coping mechanism was the invention of the operational level of war, a concept that is, this book argues, problematic at best and ruinous at worst. In contrast, operational art, a sister concept, is useful as a descriptor of what military staffs do to support and sustain tactics in the pursuit of strategy. The operational art performed by staffs is best described in theory as a set of disciplines, commonly known as warfighting functions. The military success usually attributed, wrongly, to the discovery of an operational level of war should instead be credited to the rise of general staffs. This adoption of the operational level by Western militaries